I am Chris Hopper. Some people know me as Riot Chopper. I am the head of NA Esports. We are incredibly excited to announce today that we are bringing the spring finals down to Miami. We're going to the heart of South Beach, and we will be doing the spring finals at the Fillmore Miami Beach. It's an iconic venue. It's a great city. We are super excited to be able to come back to Florida and really hit South Florida in a meaningful way. So we're really jazzed to announce this today. So one thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to establish a little bit more diversity in the types of venues that we can utilize. When we look at the spring finals, we want to kind of target slightly smaller venues that allow us to be, again, a little bit closer to the fans, kind of establish a different look and feel. And then we can go to the larger, kind of more traditional basketball style venues for our summer final show and kind of tap into the passion of a giant crowd. In establishing those two different channels, we give ourselves a much greater diversity in the type of regions that we can go after, because we're not just looking at what basketball venues are available. Okay, it's the same 4 to 6 cities that we always go to. So it allows us to reach out to a wider audience, and it allows us to kind of embrace, different looks and feels so that events feel unique. By being able to go to Miami and tap into this venue, we're able to also tap into Miami and the culture of South Beach and the amazing residents and players and fans that we have down there. And so with the team that we have and the ability that we have to kind of tap into that local market, being able to tap into a wider set of local markets was a major priority for us. So, we're still committed to having those big venues for the summer, and we want to kind of experiment with some slightly smaller but more intimate and kind of experiential venues for the spring. And, we'll see how it goes, but we're excited to be able to tap into a wider set of regions. It starts for us with really kind of like looking at regions and sort of initially trying to parse out which regions are we really interested in, which regions are really underserved. And, if there are certain regions that we haven't hit for a long time or ever, we do try to look at those. And then it turns into just a checklist of availability. And so we work with a partner to identify what venues are available, because we have a very specific time frame and we have a lot of very specific requirements for our show. We're not unfortunately, as easy to drop in and drop out of a venue as, say, a concert is, where they can come in the night before and be out the day after, because of the tech requirements of hosting the professional gaming environment. We have a little bit more of a load in that's required. And so, we have some of these checklist materials that we can then go through and kind of parse against the available venues. And then we come down with a short list of venues that check our boxes and are available during the time frame. And so then we start to look at, okay, within that set, what regions have really strong player bases? What regions have really strong esports fandom? We kind of correlate that against how long it's been since we've been within a certain radius of that market to try and determine how underserved are those fans. And then at the end of the day, we try to figure out what the compelling story of that venue is. So for South Beach, it's clearly the culture of Miami. It's, the culture of South Florida and bringing an event down there and being able to tap into that incredibly vibrant community. And for different markets, it's different stories. For Madison Square Garden, it's, the iconic history of that venue and presenting esports in such hallowed ground for sports in general. So we like to look at the venues and try and figure out, what story are we telling here? Why are we coming here? Once we've determined that we're going to be serving the fans correctly, how can we determine that we're optimally presenting the event? And once we can do that, then, we look to contract with the venue, and barring any holds there, we're ready to kind of announce and move forward with the event.
How long does that process take in a total?
It has historically taken longer than we'd like. I think the fact that we're presenting this in early February and the event is in early April is a window that we would like to make longer. And so going forward, one thing that our team is really committing to is trying to lock in those venues a lot earlier, because we understand the player pain that's felt by not having a proper window to book travel and find reservations for hotels and kind of lock in your trip. It's hard to do, and it's expensive to do when you have to do it last minute. So we're trying to do it a lot earlier. Every venue is different in terms of how long it can take to book. Some of them are, we have more difficulties around certain contractual elements than others. Some of them are busier than others. And so figuring out the exact schedule of when we could get in and can we make load in work is the difficulty there. So no venue, I would say, presents the same set of challenges, but they all present a similar enough set of challenges that we believe we should be able to be more efficient about this process and present information about future events to our fan base sooner. To be honest, I would say no. We've already been focusing on this as a priority to get an announcement out for a long time. And even before some of the more recent content pieces about where is spring finals, we already knew that today was going to be our announcement date. We already knew the material that we were going to be announcing. So as much as it is, I would say, an appreciated reminder of the player pain that we are indirectly causing, I wouldn't say that this is necessarily a direct response to that. It's a response to the fact that we know that this is not the optimal way to present events, and we really want to enable our fans to make the best choices and experience the event if possible, and we don't want to deny them any of those possibilities. So we're not going to give credit to anybody for kind of forcing our hand here. This was something that was certainly already on our docket. Man, there are so many. For one, we tend to have more equipment than anything else. I think most notably when we did the 2013 Worlds at the Staples Center, at the time we were the biggest venue by truckloads of equipment, having beaten out the recent Grammys there by like 3 full semis of equipment. At the end of the day, we just have an immense technical requirement of network infrastructure, electric, broadband internet to facilitate both all of the intra-Riot material that needs to happen, as well as all of the media material that needs to happen, as well as all of our broadcast capability coming out of that venue. There's also a lot of kind of interesting fan service requirements that we have. Not many sports venues are accustomed to needing to deal with the security challenge of fans coming dressed in what appears to be armor and weaponry. And so actually negotiating with security around how to deal with cosplay ends up being a pretty significant challenge there as well. And then there's kind of the normal challenges of integrating our merch with theirs, integrating our sponsors with theirs. And I would say those are no more difficult than most normal sports teams run into. But I would say the technical element of venues and whether or not they can establish the appropriate technical specifications that we need tends to be one of the bigger challenges. I think it does change a little bit for the fan at home. You know, at the end of the day, the majority of what you're tuning in for is the play on the Rift. And at the end of the day, the Rift isn't going to be changing at all. But I do think that there's something to be said for the feel of the fan when the crowd is much closer to the analyst desk and the crowd is much closer to the stage, because every time you see the fans in the crowd, there's an aspirational element for the fan watching at home. And so with a crowd that's closer to the stage, aspirationally, the fan at home thinks, I could be in that seat. And so what would my experience be in that seat? How can I hear the players shot calling from stage? Can I get the signature from them after the game? You know, can I hear the casters over the sound of the crowd from their desk? And so for us, you know, having fans think about what it would be like to attend these events is a key part of putting on the event, because we want fans to be excited about going to future events, because we want to bring future events to those markets. And so the more that we can make the event feel like something you would want to attend, the more we're setting ourselves up for future success with future events. You know, Tallahassee was a great venue. I was working at that venue, and you know, we had a great event there. It was a great location. But you know, when you look at the difference between Tallahassee and Miami, that's actually a greater distance between the two of them than the distance between Los Angeles and San Francisco. And so if you told a Los Angeles resident that we did an event in San Francisco and that should count for you, I think they would probably be rightfully pretty upset about it. So for us, we looked at South Florida as kind of a still yet unserved market. And when you look at the player base, you look at the esports fandom down there, you know, it was incredibly promising. We've had our eye on that region for a long time. And so, you know, this was just a great opportunity for us to tap into the audience, the region, a really iconic venue in the Fillmore, and finally bring an event down to South Florida. So the Fillmore is actually a venue that's been around in South Beach for decades. It hosted a lot of actually TV broadcasts back in the sort of 60s, 70s, 80s. It had most famously the Jackie Gleason show was filmed there for a while. Dick Van Dyke, Johnny Carson, some of the really iconic talk shows were actually filmed out of South Beach. And since then, it's turned into an incredibly busy concert and show venue. I think it was actually the busiest mid-sized venue in North America last year. It did like over 200 concerts and shows. So it brings, you know, an incredible operational staff. Those guys do shows night in, night out. So they're, you know, incredibly well versed in hosting an event. It's a really unique look and feel that we haven't really tapped into before. You know, basketball arenas lend a certain air and you can get certain broadcast shots and the crowd is sort of captured in a certain way. This is a little bit more of a theater style. It's an Art Deco venue. So we're going to get a lot of different shots with the broadcast. The crowd will be a little bit closer to the action. So it'll feel a little bit more intimate for those attending. And it really gives us a kind of new venue to experiment with how we present esports and the way that we're able to integrate the fans into the show. I think it's less, I don't want to specifically call it out to the fandom particularly, because I think we have incredibly passionate fans all around the country, and there's dozens of venues that we know we could fill with fans if it came down to it. Honestly, the challenge is the volume of opportunities that we have. We do 2 big finals a year in North America, and over time you can only hit so many different regions around the country. So whether you look at how long it's been since we were in the Pacific Northwest, or how long it's been since we were in the Midwest, or we managed to hit Canada for the first time 2 years ago, but how long has it been since we were in the South? Did South Florida hit the same audience as Atlanta? There are a ton of really hungry fan bases out there. We unfortunately have a very limited volume of events to serve them, and so for us, it's incredibly exciting to know that these fans are hungry for an event, because it tells us that we're doing the right thing and that we're providing value to the fans who are excited to come to it. And the more fans who are clamoring for events in their town, the more excited we get to continue to find ways to serve them. And, unfortunately, it might not mean that we can bring an event there next year, but you can be sure that we're looking at bringing an event there as soon as we can. And so for us, that's a heartening challenge that we, are always excited to find better ways to serve those communities if we can't provide the live event experience. Yeah, geolocating teams is a really interesting topic, and I think I could go for an hour on this one. This is something that we've been thinking about for a while. I think the answer for our side is that we don't necessarily have the conclusive business model to justify making it all work right now. As we were going through the franchising process, we understood that there was going to be a significant enough change in how we do business and how teams were going to do business that we didn't want to layer on top of that trying to relocate everyone around the country. And so we made the conscious decision that in going through franchising, we were going to keep everybody in LA. We were going to focus on solidifying the relationship between owners and Riot, solidifying the fan experience of the broadcast as we shifted back from BO3 to BO1, and solidifying the player experience as they go from working on essentially what could have been transient teams to now permanent partners of the league. What that means for us in the future is a really interesting question. And to be frank, it's one that I'm excited to explore with the partners that we brought in. One of the key elements that we had with franchising was we selected owners who we believed could help us make some of these tough decisions. And so that's why you see a breadth of experience among those owner bases, not only in traditional sports ownership, but in entertainment, in some cases in real estate development. We have a breadth of experience there that we need to be able to tap into if we're going to find a way to make geolocation work. I think when it comes to the way esports was founded, it was founded in a very non-geographic fashion. A TSM fan could live in New York just as easily as they could live in San Francisco. Going to a geolocated model in some ways disenfranchises that fan who doesn't live in that town. If you now have a team in New York, but you're a TSM fan and they're in San Francisco, who do you cheer for? And so we want to be really careful that we're not alienating fans through that process who have already created these well-established allegiances to teams. But we do believe that there is value in finding ways to connect fans who might not have otherwise selected an individual team and kind of giving them an impetus to establish a deeper bond with a particular organization. So the unfortunate short answer for you is I don't have the answer yet. The longer answer is it's something that I'm incredibly excited to work on with our owners and some of the other staff here at Riot and explore for the future, because we know that there's a ton of value that can be driven for players there. And so exploring that then becomes, one of our top priorities. Yeah, I think when it comes to the look and feel of a live event, there's a certain amount of expertise that I feel we've developed over the last 6 years that has led us to a continual sort of slow refinement of the process. So I think when it comes to the way that the desks are laid out on stage and the way that we use LEDs, some of that is venue dependent in terms of what capabilities does the venue have to display additional stats or, additional photos or champion pictures or things like that. But some of it also comes down to, we know that given certain broadcast angles and given the way that people like to watch and the things they want to see over the course of pick ban and game and post-game analysis, there are certain key elements that probably won't change significantly just because we've sort of honed in on them over time. I think one of the great things about going to a venue like the Fillmore is we're able to find different opportunities for interviews. We're able to position the analyst desk a little bit differently. We're able to capture a lot of different content and features around the event. So, the core presentation of the gameplay is probably going to look and feel fairly similar, because at the end of the day, that's the product that we know people are tuning in for. What we're excited about is the sort of the wrapping around that event, the look and feel, the stories that we're telling. Those tend to be the elements that we change a little bit more, rather than sort of the physical stage outline. I will give you two answers there. One that my heart has, and then sort of the one that I think, as a Duke fan and someone who attended Duke University, watching esports in Cameron Indoor, which is the basketball stadium there, would be an incredibly sort of nostalgic and meaningful experience for me. I understand that's a personal thing, and it's probably not even the best arena to present esports in, but in terms of meaningful to me, I would probably say Cameron. In terms of, esport impact and sort of a sense of we've been here, for a lot of us, it was the Bird's Nest, to be completely honest. That was always like, if we could go anywhere, where would we go? That was sort of the dream. I would say second to that, some of the big football venues, I think, are a really interesting challenge, especially some of the ones in the States that can seat, 100,000 plus. And if you're going with one of those, it's hard to not think about putting esports on the giant Jumbotron at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium. So I think not having any insight to technically how we would even make that stadium work, there's a casual desire to kind of see that on the whatever it is, 60-yard long Jumbotron that they have there. But we have internally, we have our kind of short list of the big venues we're looking to hit over the next couple of years, and rather than tease some of those out now, I'll save some of those for future announcements. But our team is looking at venues on more than a year-by-year basis now, and having been in some of the discussions around where both the events for North America and the events or the locations for our global events are being considered, I think our fans are going to be really excited for a couple of years to come. Just want to say thank you to all the NA fans. We know that we changed a lot this offseason between shifting the start time, BO3 to BO1, bringing in a lot of new teams. And for all of those of you who stuck with us, we're incredibly appreciative. We are excited to continue to refine this product into something that you guys can enjoy for years to come, and excited to continue building out this league into something that can really be something that you guys can be proud of. So thank you guys for continuing to watch.
For more league interviews and analysis, subscribe to our channel. You can also find stats, discussions, and more on our website and mobile app at blitzesports.com.